All right. Hello, ghosts and ghouls, and welcome to another bonus episode of The Most Haunted City on Earth. I'm Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And JT is here, of course, with us.
Hey, what's up?
And we're going to be answering some more of your questions. So we really appreciate you guys utilizing that Q&A button on TikTok. You came up with some really awesome questions this week, so we're going to answer some of those for you. JT, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, let's do it. All right. Real quick, we have to thank a couple of our listener support.
Oh, yes.
People.
Yes, so we do want to go ahead and thank a few people who have supported us on Spotify with our listener support little extra thing.
Yeah.
Would you like to explain what listener support is real quick?
Yeah, for sure. So listener support is just people supporting us every month with, whether it be 99 cents or $5 or $10. I mean, pretty sure you can put any amount in, but Vanessa Cabrera, Lainey and Bryson Turner, those are our two newest listener supporters. So we really, really thank y'all. And
Thank you so much, Lainey, Bryson, and Vanessa, for supporting us. It helps us continue to make this podcast, also to get bigger and better. So if you do want to support us in that way, we do really appreciate it. You can find that on Spotify. If you want to also...
it's in the bio.
Yes, it's in our bio. Also, if you do want to further support us so that we can continue doing this even better, or also to get extra content and podcasts before they're aired, you can find us on Patreon as well, on patreon.com/Savannah Underground. So,
for sure.
Again, thank you guys, and thank you especially to Lainey, Bryson, and Vanessa.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. So, first question from CY_illustrations is, do you think certain coffee shops are in Savannah could be haunted? My friends and I have had weird experiences in Gallery Espresso, Sentient Bean, and Starbucks on Broughton. I would love to hear y'all's opinions.
It's the coffee beans that are attracting the ghosts, obviously. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, each of those three locations are historic buildings.
Yes.
They are steeped with stories. The Sentient Bean is right next to the Mary Telfair Hospital. Mm-hmm. That whole area was a part of high speculation as to yellow fever, hidden graves. The morgue tunnel that we talked about under Forsyth Park actually supposedly connected the Candler Hospital to the Mary Telfair Hospital. So it actually ran under Forsyth Park, and that is where they made a makeshift mass grave by just putting the bodies into the tunnel that used to transport bodies back and forth. So Sentient Bean is right there. Wright Square is notoriously haunted. Not Wright Square, excuse me. Chippewa Square. Chippewa Square, notoriously haunted. That is where the Gallery Espresso is, right there on the corner. Interestingly enough, it shares a wall with what's Bryson Hall, which was one of the first automobile showrooms in the country. So there's a lot of mystique and interesting things. And then when you get down, the closer you get to the river, the older the city is. So when you're on Broughton Street, you're only 2 blocks away from the river, and so you're looking at buildings that have some roots in the 1700s. Some of the bricks of that building, or at least the foundation work, is definitely very old, and that lends to a lot of haunting. So yeah, I like to say that it's harder to find a place in Savannah that isn't haunted than is. So it's definitely very possible that they got something going on over there, especially Sentient Bean and also Gallery Espresso, because Chippewa is one of the places of one of the Yamakra Native American burial mounds also. So, that's going to lend to a bit of energy going on. But
okay. Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that actually, this is a stupid question, but do you think ghosts might want coffee or caffeine? Well, okay. Let me just say this. If I die tomorrow and I turn into a ghost, I know for a fact one of my favorite things is coffee. And that I might be just, wandering around a coffee shop constantly looking for. I'm not kidding.
No,
like,
no.
like,
Death
like
or decaf.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good, babe.
But,
That's really good.
The more simplistic answer would be it's a place of gathering.
Absolutely.
It's a place where multiple people come and go. And
Sure.
and if you've ever been to downtown Savannah and been to Gallery Espresso in the middle of the day, that place is packed. And Sentient Bean gets packed, and Broughton Street packed. So what you're really dealing with is kind of we've said this about theaters. Why theaters are haunted? It's because it's a place where people gather, and the more living souls that gather in a place, the more likely it is that a lost soul will follow. Will go to where all this life is happening and interaction is happening.
I used to actually work at Fox and Fig over off of Troop Square, and I noticed the difference between when we, because I worked there towards the beginning of 2021 when it started to open up a little bit, but we stayed closed off where we wouldn't allow guests inside to dine inside of the restaurant. And I noticed that once we started allowing guests in more, the more paranormal activity would happen inside
Absolutely.
of that building. And so it's very possible, that all of that energy from the stimulus of people, and even people bringing their ghosts along with them to the coffee shops, because it attracts every type of person, every
Absolutely.
walk of life. So
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Great question, CY Illustrations. Thank you guys. Thank y'all so much for all these awesome questions. Seriously. All right, on to the next one. Have you ever come in contact with the spirit/entity that you knew personally, and how was that experience, if so? And that comes from Shyla Exeria.
Yes. So I might have told this story before, but one of my first experiences with a spirit was my grandmother, who passed away when I was 2 years old. Had no remembrance of her. I had met her up until that point, but she used to visit me as a child, probably up until like the age of like 8 years old, where she would actively visit often. And I remember when I was a child, I would see her sitting on my bed, and she would talk to me, and she would ask me questions, and ask, how are you? Like, how is school? How are your parents? And just things like that. It's very grandmotherly, just checking in, sort of. And that was one of, I think, the only experiences I've had with a relative. I luckily have not had many relatives pass away in my lifetime up into this moment. So it was pleasant. It was a pleasant experience. It freaked my parents out, but,
The only one that I can really comment on, and it's very weird, was when I was maybe 6 or 7, I saw my father come out of the kitchen and walk down the hall. And what was strange was my father had gone away on a mission. My father was in the Army, and he had gone away. So it was weird because we didn't expect that he would be back. I didn't know he was even home. So I went chasing after him. And I was so excited to see him. And I chased after him as he went down the hall. And when I got to the room that I saw him turn into, he wasn't there. And so I became convinced, 100% convinced, that my father had died on a mission somewhere in the world, and that his ghost came and visited me. And my dad did not come home for weeks. And everything was very hush-hush, and nobody would talk to us, and nobody gave us any information. So I was absolutely convinced that that's what happened. Well, then my father shows up.
Oh, good.
He comes home.
Oh, phew.
But he doesn't look like himself. He looks different, so I was convinced he was an imposter. And for about a year, I was convinced that my father had been replaced. Now, being the age I was, I thought he was replaced by a robot. But it was so bizarre. And years and years and years later, I found out my father was in some kind of accident. They called it a training accident, and that he was laid up. And the reason why he didn't come home was because he was being taken care of in a hospital. And when I heard that, I was like, did they declare you dead? Did you die? And my dad, very nonchalantly, is like, maybe. He's like, maybe. And basically the story was his chute didn't open. and it did something called a cigarette roll, and he hit the ground, but he survived. But it caused all kinds of damage, and of course, he had lost all this weight, and he looked really different when he came home. And I thought, maybe I saw my dad at the moment he hit the ground, or shortly thereafter.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the craziest story you've ever told, Chris.
Yeah.
Wow.
That
needs a movie.
Yeah, seriously. That
was crazy.
That's a
I don't even know what to say.
I know, right? That goes into so many different interesting paths of paranormal.
Yeah, well, and even still, I talk about this often, that you don't have to be dead to haunt a place.
Yeah.
It can just be an expression of emotion. It can be any number of things that cause you to inhabit a place or a space. And so, I never got a straight answer from my dad. He does not talk about that time. And I just took it on. I even once asked my sister if she remembers this time when Dad looked different, and I think she was at the time like, yeah, it was weird. I thought he was, and she was like, I thought he was replaced. I was like, yeah, me too. I totally thought he was a different person.
Oh my Lord!
Like they Paul McCartney'd my dad.
Yeah.
Bruh.
The doppelganger.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Wow. I actually have a kind of an interesting story about someone who visited my school when I was younger, who basically what happened was he was an electrician. He would work on telephone poles and wires and all of that. And so one day he had a horrendous accident, and he was electrocuted with like a gajillion volts of electricity, and he fell like you said, like 20, 30 feet down right onto the ground, and was immediately killed. Immediately killed. The paramedics showed up, and he was revived after like 8 minutes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And he told us that he saw God, he saw the gates, he saw heaven and everything. And this wasn't like I looking back at it, I was like, was this like a ploy to like make me believe in God? Like, I don't know. And which I personally do, but I didn't know if it was a fake story or something to try to get me to believe in it. But the way that he told the story, it was just so natural, and he was just like this like normal dude. And he was talking about it because he actually wrote a book. It was so incredible for him that he wrote a book. I don't know what it's called. Sorry, y'all. Maybe you can Google it. Yeah, Google can probably find it. But he wrote a book about it, and it was not envisioning anything. He like went up there, and then all of a sudden he was like about to go through the gates, and it just cut. Like hard cut, no dramatic exit, no God telling him you have to go back or anything like that. Well, it was just a hard cut, and he's like, and they're just resuscitating him. And I've always thought about that story, and so that's what that reminded me of.
Yeah.
But,
well, I mean, people have like said when they astral project a lot of times, because a lot of times it's when you sleep, you astral project, and if you're woken up while your body is there, but your soul is over in the plane, they report, like, if somebody wakes you up too quickly, it feels like this sucking motion. Like, it's the worst feeling ever.
And you hit the bed, like you...
Yeah.
Like,
really?
You feel like you've fallen, and you landed on the bed,
Yeah. And it kind of sounds a little bit like that, where it's just a very jarring awakening of sorts. Yeah. So... maybe his soul, he was declared dead for sure. So his soul definitely did leave his body. But
yeah, he was super dead for like literally, he said like almost 10 minutes. And when he came back to life, he said, I was so upset because he wanted to go to heaven.
Right, sure, right.
He wanted to go. He was like,
well, there's been other people who have reported, when they were declared dead, but then they were revived.
Yeah,
they just talk about how there's this. No pain, no everything is just nice and warm and soft and peaceful. So I can believe it, It's the one true time where you feel peace.
He was so convincing because he was like, the like it's so cliche. He like acknowledged how cliche it sounds to see this like light at the end of a tunnel type of deal. But he's like, it's cliche for a reason.
Oh yeah, cliches don't
happens.
just happen.
Yeah,
cliches come about because
yeah. And so he kind of talked like he was excited to die at that point because he just really wanted to. He really wanted to get there. You know, I don't know, but anyway, interesting story. All right, let's go on to the next one. TN Markham 13 asks, which hotels/inns are best to stay in for paranormal activity?
Pick your choice. Literally all of them have something
pretty much
going.
Every single one that you can think of. Even the new constructs have been coming up with stories. We've been hearing reports from like hotels that have been built in the last 3 or 4 years. So yeah, take your pick. But if you want the famous, you've got Kehoe House, you've got 1790, you've got the Marshall House. I would say that those three come with pretty remarkable ghosts. The Forsyth Park Inn, amazing ghost story there. We should do a podcast on that one.
Oh, yeah.
Great story. And then, of course, the mansion on Forsyth, which used to be a funeral home. As a matter of fact, the restaurant was the 700 Drayton was the funeral home, and so that place deserves probably an episode of its own.
Tell the story about. I love the story, like that you used to work there, like when you were younger, and
I took a job at the mansion for the sole purpose of doing ghost hunts. When it became the mansion, I was doing night security, and I was able to just walk this entire perimeter, go through the house. I've got an incredible picture of what appears to be a little girl standing at the top of the stairs of the 700 Drayton. And so the 700 Drayton was and it had been a funeral home for ages. And if you go around to the back of the building, you can still see where they would load the coffins onto the carriage. There's like a winch system that they would use to lower, the coffin onto the carriages for the funeral processions. And I conspired my way into working nights at a haunted building. And that was not the first time I would intrude on buildings in Savannah at night because I just want to experience it. I just want to be, in the building. And the easiest way to do that is to get a job. I remember when Kendler Hospital was about to become the law school. I was like,
Savannah
maybe
Law.
I could be a janitor. Maybe I could get a job there as night security or something, because that place is woefully haunted as well.
And you took that photo of that little girl.
I did. Yes.
Yeah.
I took the picture, and I would not ever have thought there was anything on it.
Sure.
But while I was looking at it on my laptop at work at the mansion, the morning room service guy comes in and he kind of screams. He's just like, oh my God. I was like, what? He's like, what do you mean, what? Look at this thing. And because the way my laptop was, I'm looking at it, I don't see anything. But he's looking at it from an angle where, the old LCDs.
Yeah.
He's seeing a little girl on the stairs. I can't see her at all. She is not apparent to me in the picture. You have to really manipulate the picture to make the girl show up. But yeah, that's a creepy.
Yeah, I remember you showed me that, Chris, and I was like, this was like 5 years ago?
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago. I was like, no way. And I'm just like, wow, it looks so
The
real,
really
'cause
bizarre
it
thing is I don't think I would ever, I would never have known she was there, because if you look at the picture, she's not there. You have to change the contrast of
lift
the
them
picture
shadows
in order to see it. We'll throw it up for you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's funny. There in the 700 Drayton restaurant, there is a opening to the tunnels. I don't know if you remember that or not.
So that is correct. Yes.
Yeah.
There is. And
God, that is a haunted tower.
one of the most bizarre instances was when they were building the mansion portion. So the funeral home had always been there, but there was this extra part, an annex onto the building, and they were knocking it over with bulldozer, and this gigantic explosion of smoke comes out of it, and all of downtown is like, what is that? And it was all over for a couple of blocks there was just this plume of smoke, and they thought it was an explosion, but there was no fire. They couldn't figure it out. Well, it turns out that they hit a vault of unclaimed cremation. So it was people's ashes that just kind of billowed out of this like structure inside the annex building.
Yo, this is a good episode.
Right?
This is a good episode.
So remember, we looked down that hole. Remember, because Stacy, so JT's brother Kiwan, his biological sister Stacy, she used to work at the 700 Drayton. And so we went there one time, and she knows us. We like creepy things. And so she was like, I got to show you guys something. And so she shows us.
Yeah, I remember that.
She shows us the entrance and lifts it up, and we look down, and it's just pitch black, y'all. Like, it is the creepiest looking thing. It looks like you're looking back into the early 1800s.
Yeah, it was only a block away from the Candler Hospital, or 2 blocks from the Candler Hospital.
Yeah.
Separate 1 block away from the Candler Hospital. So it was definitely a part of that, the morgue tunnel system, because that's what they called it, the morgue tunnel. It was where they moved bodies under the ground. You had a funeral home, a hospital, well, and 2 hospitals.
Yep.
And they would actually transport the bodies so they wouldn't have to be transported on the streets where everybody was walking around. They would transport them under the ground to the funeral home and to,
Yeah, it's super creepy, though. It really is. That whole area. Forsyth's way creepier than people like to believe it is.
It's very true. It's strangely forgotten for its ghost stories, but it has a lot of good ghost stories.
It's because it's so pretty, and everyone's like, the fountain. It's so beautiful. Look at all the weddings and all of the picnics and the playground. There's so much death underneath it.
Yeah, so much death. So much.
Alrighty. And so for the next one, Soy.Petrie asks, if a person is cremated, wow, this is oddly, this was the next one. Wow. If a person is cremated, would their spirit be able to roam/attach itself to something or someone since it hasn't been buried, or would it stay in the urn?
What an excellent question. And
That's a
there's
really good question.
so many approaches to this depending on your faith. But for the most part, cremation is usually a part, there is a ceremony in which you are creating a burial-like situation. There are prayers and there are things. I mean, some people are just like put on a conveyor belt and cremated. But the general belief is that the urn becomes the vessel of the body. The ashes still have the attachment of the spirit. And so a lot of people like spread my ashes here, spread my ashes there. So that becomes their funereal ritual. However, there's a lot of belief that the body, i.e. the ashes, will still hold remnant spiritual energy simply because it was the vessel of the spirit on this plane and in this world. However, there are people who believe that the act of cremation releases the spirit completely and allows the spirit to leave this plane fully without any attachments, destroying the anchor, as it were, so that there is the belief that cremation actually is a more severing ceremony. It severs your ties to this world through fire. However, it changes with so many, and we're talking about multiple faiths and multiple beliefs of what happens to the body and what happens to the spirit after death.
Yeah, I personally would go about the route of thinking that it is more severing, just because anytime you burn anything that has some kind of spirit attached to it, it opens it up. Like how we talked about in the Ouija board episode. If you burn a Ouija board, you're opening it up, you're releasing that spirit. That's kind of where I would go, but you're absolutely right in thinking it really does depend on your faith. And because there are some faiths that believe that wherever your bones reside is where your spirit resides. So if your bones are cremated into this urn, it would make sense that it would stay with the urn. So,
although it's interesting because I want to say, I believe it's Chinese. There is a culture where they will write messages to the dead and then they'll set the paper on fire. And the act of burning the paper makes the message go into the spirit realm.
Oh.
So,
wow.
there are beliefs that anything that you burn immediately is transferred to the spirit realm. So that's an interesting approach as well, to think that if you wanted to talk to someone, you'd write a note and then you set it on fire, and then the words from your note would go into the spirit realm.
Yeah. Fire is a very powerful tool
Yes.
in the sense of spirituality and things of that nature. It is kind of what amplifies things. So,
I would think that if you're cremating a body, you're almost destroying everything about it because fire is so destructive. I mean, is that not?
well, so here's the thing though, is it just speeds up the decomposition
Yes.
process. That's all it really is doing, because your body's gonna decompose whether it's set on fire or not, So, especially because the act of cremation is in a respectful manner, it's not like you were murdered and set on fire to destroy the remains.
Right.
Hopefully. Yeah, hopefully that's the case, because that's a whole different,
Yeah. No, absolutely.
process. But it's very ceremonious, and the way that people treat urns and treat ashes, it's going to allow the spirit to kind of go to the next realm if they choose so,
Okay.
in the same way that a burial would. So,
Alrighty. Let's see. The next one is from Jimmy _ Starchild asks, has there been a personal experience that made you think twice about looking into the paranormal?
Many.
yeah.
Yeah, I dare say the reason I look into the paranormal at all is because I am terrified of not knowing what's around the corner. So ultimately, I'm only involved or only research or only look because I have a lot of pause, because I am worried of what I don't know. And I don't know, it's an endless amount of not knowing. So I'm always looking for the story. I'm always looking for the thing that gives me some foothold onto whatever it is that happens. Personally, I feel I have been in the presence of what I would call the devil 3 times in my life. And personally, I have seen damaging interactions with the supernatural amongst, people who come wanting some kind of reprieve from haunting, episodes in their home. I'm even talking right now to a family that had a child drown, and it's like, and they are convinced it was a supernatural event, and they're trying to get out of their house and trying to get away from, the entire area. And so, yeah,
You're talking to them right now? Like, not now, but you're talking to them
yes,
recently?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been in contact with them a few times, but it's fascinating how often brushes with the supernatural, because I think that people have very casual encounters all the time. I think people have very casual and probably don't even notice, small things, little reminders that pop up, and they're like, oh, that reminds me of my grandmother. Oh, that reminds me of my brother, or whatever. But whenever it's super effective to the life, I always second guess. I'm always second guessing. I'm like, I don't think I want to face that. I don't want to look at that.
I personally, I don't know. I think it's because I've been able to see spirits my entire life. There's less of a fear for them. That I've seen some really gnarly spirits in my life, because it is not just Victorian ghosts and whatnot. You can become a spirit at any time. So I've seen spirits on the sides of roads that are mangled from car wrecks and stuff like that. So I'm a little desensitized to a certain degree. I have experienced spirits. I had a spirit that lived over, we called it the apartment at my house back in Florida where I grew up. It's a home, and then we had like a detached garage with like a guest apartment sort of thing over top of it. And mind you, this area that we lived in, we built the house, so it wasn't like there was another family that ever lived here. What I had researched is that I believe there had been a Native American tribe that lived on that land at some point. But somehow there was a spirit of what looked like a child, like a little girl. They always do. But she was so vicious towards me because I could see her. And other people could feel her negativity in that apartment area, but I was the only one that has ever gotten scratches and bruises from her. She would be probably the most aggressive spirit that I've come in contact, that I regularly came in contact with. But even that, it never made me want to steer away from it. It made me want to learn more so that I could defend myself.
Sure.
So I feel like you can go one or two ways with paranormal experiences, with things that are a little bit more malevolent. You can either get really scared and you can second guess, like, okay, I'm never going to touch paranormal stuff again because I don't want to deal with these things, and that is totally fair. And a lot of people end up doing that. Or you can just become a bookworm like I am and just read everything you can about them, because I find power through knowledge, personally.
Oh, absolutely. That's literally why I do it. I do it because I cannot find any comfort until I have an answer.
Yeah, I just personally, I'm like, the more I can find out about spirits, and that was the reason why I started taking some demonology classes too, is so I could be more aware of these malevolent spirits. And if I do encounter them, because I do put myself in a position of sorts to encounter things, I will know how to handle those situations. But that little girl, only myself and my grandmother on my mom's side had ever seen her. But she was rough. She was a rough thing.
Jeez. I actually remember walking through a swamp with you in Walterboro. Walterboro, South Carolina. Yeah. Almost called it Georgia. And we were just walking. It was my 27th birthday. We went to Walterboro because I just wanted to hike with the mutt and all of that. And so I remember her looking out into the woods and goes, "There's someone hanging right there." And I'm like, "What?" Wait, stop, And she's like, "Yep, he's hanging right there." And I guess, do you remember that?
Yeah.
We were looking at mushrooms, and the next thing you know, you're just like, "Hey Jay, just want to let you know, there's someone hanging literally 20 feet away from us." And I obviously couldn't see the person, and I don't know, that was just like a super creepy story.
That happens all the time to me, though. Like,
I know.
Yeah, and you kind of have to get used to it after a certain point. But
I will never get used to it.
I do not want to get used to it.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get the option. So
Fair enough.
Yeah. I always, like, the way I can explain it to people is, remember in The Sixth Sense when they're stuck in traffic and the little boy, I don't know why I'm blanking on the character's name, but the main character, the child.
Haley Joel Osment's character.
Yes. And they're stuck in traffic, and he looks out the window, and it's because there's a horrible accident, and a biker got hit. And he walks up to the car, and his head's like smashed in.
I love M. Night Shyamalan.
Right?
I do.
But that is the best way I can explain it to people, is sometimes it is that graphic where, especially with people die in a very traumatic way, like hanging or in a car accident, or, they were murdered. Sometimes the physical form of the spirit does look that gory. And unfortunately, it can be.
Maybe that's why when we pass a car wreck, I can't look and you do.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, I hate real gore. I love gore in films, but I cannot stand, this, I cannot stand real gore. And when we pass like a car wreck, if I see it like horrendously bad, if there's like a sheet over the person or whatever, I am not looking. And then Madison, it doesn't seem to bother you. And I'm like, dude, like,
yeah,
creepy.
I don't like to see the suffering of people, but
no, I know.
I can handle a dead body.
Yeah.
I should have worked in a morgue, I guess.
Yeah, seriously. Alrighty. So on to the next one. Ooh, this is an interesting question. Keegan Thallow asks, is it possible for pets to get possessed?
So we kind of talked about this a little bit in Chloe Greyface's episode. So I don't know, to be honest. I could see maybe a possibility, but that's like some real Pet Cemetery type stuff. You know, it's
when you talk about like a pet possession and things like that. Sometimes I will refer to demons as a spiritual fire, like a force of nature that we can't have no gauge for. But if it gets on you, it can cause damage. It can burn you, and with that knowledge, like a rampant life-eating force, if it got on your pet would absolutely exhibit, the signs of of a possession. All the changes of character and things of that nature. But we were discussing that the avenue to life does not seem to be through an animal. It does not seem to be, in most regards, when a spirit is looking to invade this realm, it doesn't see an animal and say, that's the one.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to choose. That does not mean it's not possible. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It just seems like in our history and in discussing it with people, very rarely do you have animal ghosts. Usually it is very benevolent and very simplistic. And certainly very rarely do you have animal possession. However, interestingly enough, I did have a friend who had a dog that seemed to be taking commands from something. Like it would sit very abruptly and look very intently at nothing. And you're like, as if something just told it to sit. And it was very interesting. And it makes me wonder that could a ghost conceivably train a dog? Because dogs can be vicious under command. They can be very protective and very forceful.
Yeah.
And if a spirit is literally communicating with the animal, could the animal grow, attached to the spirit and then carry out the spirit's, sick, go get them. So that's very interesting.
That is very interesting, because animals are definitely some of the most sensitive creatures to see paranormal. It's children and pets usually. Like I can always tell if I for some reason can't see the spirit that's in the house or something. My dogs do. Like yesterday, Argyle was just losing it all morning. She was barking over where the desk is in our living room.
Yeah, she loves barking at that vanity. We have a family vanity that's like
it's so haunted.
Older than baseball.
Yeah.
And that's kind of an interesting indication too, because most dogs, if there is an evil spirit, will get loud and vicious towards it. And it's like, that seems like a no-go for possession. Like if a ghost is coming up on a dog and it's like, "Arr, arr," and you're like, you know what? Maybe not.
Yeah, our little silky terrier taking down demons.
Yeah, exactly.
She's a demon herself, so that works.
It's true. But yeah, I guess the consensus of this answer is maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know of many reports of it. So
I don't know many stories of that. Although I have many stories of pets interacting with the paranormal. But not possession per se.
Yeah.
But who's to know?
Yeah, if your pet has been possessed, let us know.
Yeah.
So
I've seen videos of chihuahuas that I'm pretty sure were possessed.
I think that's just chihuahuas.
Yeah.
But I've seen some pretty nice chihuahuas too. I met some, coconut.
Coconut's older than baseball though. So I mean, it's
I guess. Alrighty. So here we go. On to the next one. Tier, like TIER Archimus asks, could you discuss pirates in Savannah or any of their ghosts? Sincerely, pirate enthusiast and cosplayer. And then hashtag ghost heroine.
That's our brand now. This keeps happening to us.
For sure.
I guess we have to make merch.
I will say, I will say right now that we have a hockey team coming called the Savannah Ghost Pirates. That's and very convenient.
I know that we have some history with pirates. There is confirmed reports that Blackbeard came to Savannah.
Oh, absolutely.
The whole Pirate House restaurant is based off of privateers and sailors going there, and they were doing the Shanghais that would take them down through the tunnels and put them on the ships. But
ultimately poorly documented.
Yeah.
So arguably very little pirate activity in Savannah. However, knowing that, and keeping in mind that Charleston was where most of these pirates were killed, and hanged, and Port Royal was this huge pirate destination. The interesting thing about Savannah is it is not facing the ocean. It's actually inland, which makes it a great pirate hideout. Pirates could come up the Savannah River, the main mouth of it, and be out of the view of the West Indies Trading Company. And one of the interesting things was claim to fame of Treasure Island, the Robert Louis Stevenson novel, is that Captain Flint, the captain who buried the treasure of Treasure Island, died in Savannah. It's in the book that he died in Savannah. And the reason why it's in the book is because Robert Louis Stevenson, listening to tales of pirates, heard of Savannah in those exchanges. And in some cases they say he came here, in some cases they say he just heard it from other sailors, and other sailors would talk about Savannah, things of that nature. But what I find interesting was the map, the treasure map that Robert Louis Stevenson was kind of alluding to was this map to a place called Salt's Island. And Salt's Island was supposedly a place where pirates not necessarily hid treasure, but hid themselves, because it was an inland, marshy area, and they could get a large clipper in, but also stay pretty close to the land and not draw any attention. Well, it turns out Salt's Island is Oatland Island. Oatland Island is actually Salt's Island. And I had no idea of this, but, during one of the research, I was trying to figure out the ghosts of Oatland Island. I came across this old map, and it was Salt's Island. I was like, that's interesting, because I had read previously that Robert Louis Stevenson had a map to Salt's Island, which he made up the story of Treasure Island around the idea of this map. Notoriously, apparently, there are no buried treasures and no treasure maps.
Yeah.
That is not, pirates didn't do that. They spent their treasure. They didn't bury it for later. And so you find more sunken treasure than you would find buried treasure. I'm sorry to all the Goonies fans. But interestingly enough, the pirate stories of Savannah are hard to come by, possibly because this was a rum running, this was a place that continued the trade with pirates and did not exploit them or kill them, thereby becoming the place of pirate notoriety.
Yeah, and Savannah wouldn't necessarily be a good place to bury treasure in general.
Yeah.
Swamps are not great. Go to Adak Island in Alaska.
Exactly.
Did you ever watch that documentary
yes,
that
I
came
did.
out? Yeah. Watch that for your pirate content, definitely.
Right.
But
fascinating to conceive, because the East Coast from North Carolina to the tip of Florida, and then back up into Louisiana, actually around Florida, lots of pirate stories, so many pirates, and so it's inconceivable that pirates would not spend time in this region. But also worth noting that most famous pirate adventures happened before the founding of Savannah. It was actually a very limited span of time when pirates were marauding and being very dangerous. Although the privateer era is actually more of Savannah, when pirates were actually employed and became, a part of the Navy or the naval attachments.
Yeah, definitely. Because when you go down to St. Augustine, they have a very rich pirate culture there, just because they were founded in 1565.
Right, they're one of the oldest.
Yeah, and technically this area even, because all the way from Florida up into Virginia was all Spanish territory. So it's very possible that pirates came in to that Spanish territory, but there would be no reason why that would be documented in any way, because it was just too early for it.
Right.
And it wasn't like...
Around the time that, Port Royal and Charleston and everything became the fortified fortress cities that they were, that's when pirates actually ran into a lot of trouble. And there was that great pirate roundup Spoilers for anybody who's watching Our Flag Means Death. Great pirate roundup, and a great many pirates were hanged, like on the same day or in the same year, and that was before Savannah was around.
Yeah, way before. So
we should do an episode on the Pirate's House.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's a haunted
I've had weird
restaurant
experiences
here.
there.
Yeah.
And I bet we could probably get into walk around.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Well, the vibe of the Pirate's House is just odd.
It's
in
so
general.
odd, and the energy in that place is so bizarre because of the layout of the building. You feel very disoriented, and it is the site of the oldest building in Savannah, the old florist, the garden thing.
Yeah.
And the it has paint blue shutters.
It does.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there are theories of like, do the Haint Blue shutters actually keep things out, or are they keeping things in? Because the Haint Blue, when you paint it on the inside of your house, it's definitely keeping things in, like in cases of the Davenport house. But that's why typically you would paint the top of your porch blue, not your shutters. So that is a good question.
Although, windows and porches are often to keep spirits from coming in. Although people do say they hear Captain Flint's last words shouted from inside the Pirate's House, but it is important to note Captain Flint is a fictional character. So people will say Captain Flint haunts the place, but he wasn't a real person.
Yeah.
So that lends this credence to this idea that if a story presents itself long enough, the spirit will be like, okay, I'll be Captain Flint, sure. Bring aft the rum, young Darby.
I was about to ask were his last words like more potato salad?
It was bring aft the rum.
Yeah. That's
bring aft the rum, young Darby.
Oh, okay.
And that's what people say they hear.
Yeah.
Well, and there have been people that died at the Pirate's House.
Oh, absolutely.
Like
it was also a sailor's, wayward sailor's home.
Yeah. There was one story about how this one guy had been drugged and all that to go be shanghaied down to the ships through the tunnels. But a couple of the police were showing up at the Pirate's House to do an investigation on these mysterious disappearances, and they shoved him into a wall compartment. Mm-hmm. But his body was never found until it fell out of the wall, which seems to happen a lot in Savannah.
This is a big thing. Well,
yes.
that was the original site of the St. Julian House.
Yes.
They rolled the St. Julian House from the site of the Pirate's House area. That area, they rolled it out.
Yeah.
And the story was that they found a body when they moved the house. It was in a tomb, but the body itself was too big for the tomb, so the legs were cut at the shins.
Which was not uncommon in that era.
No, it was not uncommon.
If you were too big for a coffin,
they just chopped your limbs off.
Yeah, they just kept going until you fit really nice and pretty in the little window. So
but speculation was that it was Renee Ash. I remember.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everybody.
It renewed the story of Renee Ash for a while because everyone was like, "We found Renee Ash's body." I was like, "Did you though?
Did
you?
Yeah.
They would have to add limbs for my coffin.
Oh.
We can bury 2 more in here.
I know.
Yeah, the Victorians were very small. They're very petite little people. So it's if you ever see a Victorian coffin, you'll be shocked by how tiny they are because they look like children's coffins almost, but they're not. And so
yeah. Well, cool. All right, that's the question. Those are the questions that we had. That was a great episode. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, y'all keep please asking more and more questions. You can use our Q&A button on TikTok. If you don't already follow us on TikTok, we're the Savannah Underground, and we're also Savannah Underground on Instagram. So please send us your questions because we do this every week, and it's always really fun when you guys have very intellectual questions. Also, please feel free to send us your stories, and we'll happily dissect them if that is something you're interested in.
Send videos, pictures, anything.
All of it. We love it.
Tell us your favorite cryptids, your favorite ghost stories.
Yes.
Local ghost stories too, because every town has ghost stories that are specific to the town. And while we are up to our ears in Savannah ghosts, love to hear about ghosts from your hometown.
Absolutely.
Love it.
But with that being said, like we said earlier, please go ahead and check us out on our various social medias. Also, if you'd like to become a patron, you can find us on Patreon. JT, do you have anything else?
Nope. Chris, do you want to plug your movie real quick?
Oh, sure.
We're making a movie.
So we're making a movie. Saturday, the 20th, we're going to start filming a feature-length horror movie called Hail Mary. And it's about a group of amateur exorcists who kidnap a woman they believe to be possessed, but she's more than she appears.
Alrighty.
So that sounds like a fun time for all you exorcism fans. So
yeah. And then if you wanna check out our film that we've already made, it's not a horror film; it is a thriller, and a thriller drama, and it's called Final Hours of a Suffering Artist, and it is up on Plex and soon to be Amazon, and hopefully soon Tubi.
Yep. And you can find a link to that film, obviously, because it's already on platforms. You can find that in our bio, in our link tree on TikTok and Instagram. If you're interested in watching that, we really dive into mental health, especially depression. So super interesting film, very thought-provoking, but definitely
Cool.
trigger warning for those of you who have depression. But now that we have all of our things plugged, so we can go ahead and sign off. So I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.